Hi, I'm Michał, and I'm a veterinarian. For 16 years, I have specialised in bovine reproduction. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the estrus cycle in cows. Why is it so important? Because without understanding it, we cannot properly manage reproduction within a herd. Let's start with the fact that cows are non-seasonally polyestrous, meaning their estrus cycle continues throughout the entire year, typically lasting from 18 to 21 days. We generally say it's 21 days, and we take that value as the average length of a cow's estrus cycle. What is characteristic of the bovine estrus cycle? Above all, it's the fact that we have so-called 2 or 3 follicular waves. What does this mean? It means that when a follicle grows on the ovary, at some point, it may not become the dominant follicle. Instead, it undergoes atresia, and another wave of follicular growth begins. There are usually either 2 or 3 of these waves. Do we know how many waves a specific cow or heifer will have? Unfortunately, we don't, so we must be prepared for the fact that animals in a given herd may be either 2 or 3 wave. What happens during the estrus cycle? The cycle can be divided into several phases. Let's start with prostrus, the phase where the follicle grows and prepares to become the dominant follicle. What happens during this phase? Most importantly, there is an increase in estrogen produced by the growing follicle, and an increase in FSH, which stimulates the follicle's growth. FSH is secreted by the pituitary gland, while progesterone levels remain low. The next phase is estrus. This is the phase where we have a dominant follicle, one that contains, or should contain, a mature egg cell. This phase ends with ovulation, which is the rupturing of the follicle and the release of the egg cell, which is then caught by the oviduct. This prevents it from entering the peritoneal cavity. Which hormones are active during the estrus phase? Primarily, estrogen levels peak due to production by the ovarian follicle. Of course, the rupturing of the follicle must be stimulated by a hormone called LH, which is also secreted by the pituitary gland. At this stage, we have high estrogen levels, which influence the cow's behaviour. There is acceptance of the male, and an increase in LH occurs, the LH surge, which triggers the rupture of the follicle, so the ovulation and the release of the egg cell. At this point, we also see characteristic changes in the uterus. The uterine mucosa is highly edematous, and clear mucus may be present inside the uterus. The most critical element of the estrus phase is ovulation. Ovulation occurs approximately 10 to 12 hours after the end of heat. That LH surge causes the follicle to burst and release the egg. That is what ovulation is. From a practical standpoint, what do we see on an ultrasound during the estrus phase? We see the follicle, of course, the dominant follicle. What is its size? At what size does a follicle ovulate, meaning it ruptures and releases the egg? We don't know for certain, as there are animals where the follicle ovulates at 16 millimeters, while in others, it ruptures at 23 millimeters. However, what do we actually see and assess on the ultrasound? Do we evaluate whether the heat is normal or not? We see the size of the follicle and can assess its elasticity. If it is still firm and tense, we know it will likely continue to grow and won't rupture yet. We also evaluate the uterine image. The uterine mucosa is edematous, which is very clearly visible on the ultrasound, and there is often mucus in the uterine lumen. This is frequently a thick mucus that also flows out through the external reproductive tract, the vagina, because the cervix is open.